Today, I want to give you a direct and clear update about something that has caused a lot of confusion and discussion. A new federal bill has been passed, and many people expected it to include the word stimulus. It does not. However, even though the word stimulus is not written in the bill, there are provisions inside it that could still affect SSI and SSDI recipients in meaningful ways. That is what we are going to break down carefully and simply today, so you understand what is happening, what it could mean for your monthly payments, and what steps you may need to take. Over the past few years, the word stimulus has become very familiar. Many Americans associate it with direct checks, emergency payments, or temporary financial relief. When people hear about a new federal bill, especially one connected to economic recovery, inflation, or tax adjustments, they naturally expect to see another round of direct stimulus checks. This time, the legislation does not contain that label. There is no section that clearly says stimulus payment, but that does not automatically mean there is no financial impact for seniors, retirees, or people receiving disability benefits. To understand what this bill may do, it is important to understand how Social Security benefits, SSI and SSDI, are structured in the first place. The Social Security Administration calculates benefits based on formulas tied to earnings history, cost of living adjustments, and eligibility rules. Supplemental Security Income is designed for people with limited income and resources. Social Security disability insurance supports individuals who have worked and paid into the system, but are now unable to work due to a qualifying disability. These programs are not designed to function like emergency stimulus programs. They operate under long-standing formulas that adjust annually. However, sometimes new legislation affects the surrounding economic environment. It can change tax rules, increase funding for certain programs, adjust thresholds, or modify the way cost of living adjustments are calculated. When that happens, even if the bill does not directly say stimulus, it can indirectly lead to higher monthly benefits or improved financial conditions for recipients. One of the key elements being discussed is how funding adjustments and economic support measures could influence the annual cost of living adjustment, often called COLA. The COLA is tied to inflation data. When inflation rises, benefits increase the following year to help protect purchasing power. If a federal bill supports consumer spending, modifies tax structures, or shifts economic indicators, it can influence inflation trends. That influence can then show up in the COLA calculation. Many seniors are concerned about rising grocery costs, utility bills, prescription expenses, and housing. Even a small percentage increase in monthly Social Security benefits can make a noticeable difference. While the bill does not promise a one-time direct payment labeled as a stimulus check, some of its financial provisions may strengthen funding stability for entitlement programs or support income-based credits that help lower-income households, including those receiving SSI. Another important area is taxation. Some proposals connected to broader legislation focus on reducing certain types of federal taxes or adjusting thresholds for taxation of Social Security benefits. If income thresholds are raised, fewer seniors may owe taxes on their benefits. That change alone can feel like a monthly increase because more of the benefit remains in the recipient's pocket. It is also important to understand how SSDI recipients may be affected differently from SSI recipients. SSDI is based on work history and contributions through payroll taxes. If legislation affects payroll tax allocation, trust fund stabilization, or related funding mechanisms, it could strengthen the long-term outlook of the Disability Insurance Trust Fund. While that does not create an immediate check increase, it increases financial security and reduces uncertainty about future payments. SSI operates under stricter income and resource limits. If any part of the legislation adjusts federal poverty guidelines or income exclusions, that can influence SSI payment calculations. For example, if certain credits or benefits are excluded from income calculations, SSI recipients might retain more of their support without reductions. A major point of confusion for many people is the difference between a stimulus payment and a structural benefit increase. A stimulus payment is usually temporary and designed for short-term economic relief. A structural increase, on the other hand, affects ongoing monthly payments through formula changes, inflation adjustments, or policy shifts. The current bill leans more towards structural adjustments rather than emergency checks. For seniors who rely primarily on Social Security income, stability is often more valuable than a one-time payment. Knowing that monthly benefits will continue to adjust for inflation and that funding mechanisms remain secure can provide peace of mind. Even small increases compounded over time can add up to meaningful support. Another factor that could influence benefit levels is how the broader economy responds. If economic growth strengthens and wage growth rises, payroll tax revenue increases. Higher payroll tax revenue supports Social Security trust funds. When trust funds remain strong, there is less pressure for sudden policy changes that might reduce benefits. It is also worth noting that some parts of federal legislation include funding for housing assistance, energy assistance, healthcare subsidies, and food support programs. Even if SSI or SSDI payments do not immediately increase by a fixed amount, expanded eligibility or additional funding for these programs can effectively increase a senior's disposable income. When utility assistance rises or prescription drug support expands, monthly expenses decrease. That financial relief can feel similar to a stimulus check, even though it is structured differently. Healthcare costs are one of the largest expenses for older Americans and people with disabilities. If legislation includes funding for healthcare affordability programs or caps on certain prescription costs, that could significantly reduce out-of-pocket spending. In practical terms, saving money on prescriptions each month may equal or exceed the value of a modest one-time stimulus payment. Another important element is how benefits are adjusted annually through COLA. The COLA is calculated using inflation data from the Consumer Price Index for urban wage earners and clerical workers. If inflation remains elevated, next year's COLA could reflect that. While the bill itself may not directly increase benefits, its economic impact can indirectly influence the inflation measurement used in that formula. Many people remember past direct payments during economic emergencies. Those payments were explicitly labeled and clearly defined. This time, the approach is more subtle. Lawmakers have focused on broader fiscal adjustments rather than direct cash distributions. That does not mean beneficiaries are ignored. It means the support may come through different channels. It is also important to discuss timing. Structural changes do not show up overnight. Adjustments to tax policy, inflation trends, and funding allocations can take months to reflect in benefit calculations. Seniors should not expect immediate deposits tied to this legislation. Instead, the potential impact would be seen gradually, often at the beginning of a new calendar year when COLA adjustments take effect. Financial stability is one of the main concerns for people living on fixed incomes. Even rumors about benefit reductions can cause stress. When a new bill is passed, it is natural to look for reassurance that benefits remain secure. Current information indicates that entitlement payments such as SSI and SSDI continue as scheduled, with no interruption in monthly deposits. Another factor to consider is state-level supplements. Some states provide additional payments on top of federal SSI. If federal adjustments influence state budgets or matching funds, state supplements could change. That variation depends on individual state policies, but it is something beneficiaries should be aware of. It is also important to separate headlines from confirmed details. The absence of the word stimulus in a bill does not automatically mean there is no financial benefit. Likewise, speculation about large increases without official confirmation can lead to disappointment. The best approach is to focus on confirmed provisions and understand how they interact with existing Social Security formulas. Inflation has had a significant impact on retirees and disabled Americans. Food prices, rent, and medical costs have risen. Even when COLA increases occur, they sometimes lag behind real-world expenses. That is why long-term economic stability measures can be as important as direct checks. Another consideration is how federal funding decisions affect administrative capacity. When agencies receive adequate funding, they process applications more efficiently, reduce delays, and improve customer service. For SSDI applicants waiting for disability determinations, improved processing times can be financially critical. Faster approvals mean earlier access to benefits. For people already receiving SSI or SSDI, continued funding ensures that payment systems operate smoothly. Direct deposit remains the most secure method of receiving benefits. Beneficiaries should continue monitoring official notices and keeping contact information up to date to avoid delays. The conversation about stimulus often focuses on short-term relief. However, long-term program strength matters just as much. Ensuring that Social Security trust funds remain solvent protects future retirees and current beneficiaries alike. When legislation reinforces funding mechanisms, it contributes to that stability. It is also helpful to understand that Social Security benefits are protected by law. Major changes require formal legislative action. Routine economic bills do not automatically alter eligibility rules. That protection provides a layer of security for recipients concerned about sudden reductions. While many hoped for another round of direct checks, policymakers have signaled a preference for targeted structural support rather than universal payments. That shift reflects a focus on sustainable policy adjustments instead of emergency responses. As we come to the end of this update, the most important thing to remember is that not every financial improvement comes with the word stimulus attached to it. Even though this new federal bill does not promise a direct check or use that familiar label, it may still create meaningful changes for people receiving SSI and SSDI. Through adjustments tied to inflation, funding stability, tax rules, and broader economic support, the effects can show up in steady and lasting ways. For anyone living on a fixed income, those structural improvements often matter just as much as a one-time payment. Staying informed is one of the strongest financial tools you have. Understanding how your benefits are calculated, how cost of living adjustments work, and how broader economic policies influence monthly payments can help you plan with confidence. Payments continue to be protected under federal law, and ongoing adjustments are built into the system to help preserve purchasing power over time. Even when headlines sound dramatic, the foundation of Social Security, SSI, and SSDI remains structured around stability and long-term support. In the months ahead, continue monitoring your official notices, review your annual benefit updates carefully, and keep your personal information current to avoid delays. Small changes can add up, and knowing what is confirmed versus what is speculation helps you make calm, informed decisions. The key takeaway today is simple. While this bill does not say stimulus, there are real factors that could strengthen or support your benefits moving forward. Understanding those details puts you in control and helps ensure you are prepared for whatever adjustments come next.